Psychology of dogs that always follow you. What it really means. When you stand up, even for a moment, your dog often reacts almost instantly. It doesn't pause to evaluate the situation or wait for additional cues. Instead, it simply gets up and follows you. This happens whether you are doing something important or just moving from one room to another for no clear reason. Over time, this pattern becomes noticeable. Many owners begin to question it. Why does the dog follow so consistently, even when there is no obvious reward or outcome? The most common explanations are straightforward. Some people assume the dog is very attached or affectionate. Others interpret it as dependency or mild anxiety. While both interpretations contain some truth, they do not fully explain the behavior. Behavioral research provides a more accurate framework. One of the key concepts used to understand this is the secure base effect, originally identified in human developmental psychology and later confirmed in dogs. The concept describes how an individual uses a trusted figure as a stable reference point that increases confidence when interacting with the environment. In experimental settings, dogs were given tasks they could not solve, such as food puzzles that were intentionally designed to be impossible. When the owner was present in the room, the dogs remained engaged for longer periods, explored different approaches, and continued attempting to solve the task despite repeated failure. When the owner left, their engagement dropped significantly. Across similar studies, approximately 70 to 80% of dogs show increased persistence and exploratory behavior when their owner is nearby. This indicates that the presence of the owner is not only emotionally significant, but functionally relevant for cognitive performance. In simple terms, the dog behaves differently and more effectively when the owner is present. Another important mechanism is known as referential looking. This refers to the tendency of dogs to look at their owner when faced with unfamiliar or ambiguous situations. In controlled experiments, about 83% of dogs looked back at their owner before deciding how to respond to a novel stimulus. More importantly, they did not simply observe, they used the information. When the owner displayed a positive or relaxed reaction, dogs were more likely to approach the object. When the owner showed hesitation or concern, dogs were more likely to avoid it. This demonstrates that dogs actively incorporate human emotional signals into their decision-making process. This has an important implication. The owner functions as a real-time interpretive system for the dog. For this system to work effectively, the dog needs continuous access to the owner. This explains why following behavior is so persistent. It is not only about attachment, it is about maintaining access to information that may become relevant at any moment. In addition to this, dogs are highly sensitive to behavioral patterns and routines. They continuously track which actions lead to meaningful outcomes. They learn who feeds them, who initiates walks, who opens doors, and whose movements are most often associated with changes in the environment. In households with multiple people, dogs typically show a preference for following one individual more than others. Studies suggest that dogs follow a specific person in approximately 60 to 75% of cases, and this preference is strongly linked to predictability rather than emotional closeness. The dog is effectively identifying which person is the most reliable source of relevant events. From this perspective, following behavior is partly predictive. When you stand up, your dog is not reacting to the action itself. Instead, it is responding to the probability that this action may lead to something important, based on past experience. This predictive model allows the dog to stay ahead of events, rather than react to them after they occur. There is also a biological component to this behavior. In 2017, researchers identified specific genetic differences between domestic dogs and wolves, including variants associated with increased sociability toward humans. These genetic traits are consistently present in dogs, but absent in wolves. In humans, similar genetic patterns are associated with increased social bonding and reduced avoidance of close proximity. This suggests that dogs have not only adapted to live with humans, but have been shaped at a genetic level to seek closeness and maintain proximity. As a result, the tendency to stay near humans is not solely learned behavior. It is partially encoded in the dog's biology as a result of domestication over thousands of years. However, it is important to distinguish this normal behavior from separation anxiety, as the two are often confused. Research shows that dogs with separation anxiety do not spend more time near their owners at home than dogs without it. This means that frequent following, by itself, is not a reliable indicator of a behavioral problem. A healthy dog can follow its owner throughout the day while still being capable of resting independently and remaining calm when left alone. It can disengage from the owner when necessary and does not exhibit escalating stress. In contrast, dogs with separation anxiety show a different pattern. They are unable to relax even when in close proximity to the owner, and often display persistent tension. When the owner leaves, their response is immediate and measurable. Studies indicate that stress-related behaviors in such dogs can begin within approximately 3 minutes after the owner's departure, with destructive behaviors appearing within about 7 minutes. Furthermore, the stress response does not resolve over time. Instead, observations show that physiological and behavioral stress can cycle repeatedly every 20 to 30 minutes during the entire period of absence. This pattern reflects a dysregulated stress system rather than normal attachment behavior. It is also important to note that not all quiet dogs are calm. Some dogs may stop vocalizing over time, but remain physiologically stressed. In certain cases, prolonged exposure to stress can even lead to reduced outward expression, which may be misinterpreted as adaptation. When all of these factors are considered together, following behavior can be understood as the result of multiple overlapping systems. The dog maintains visual access to the owner in order to use them as a reference point. It tracks behavioral patterns to predict future events. It incorporates human emotional signals into its decision-making process, and it is biologically predisposed to remain close to humans due to evolutionary selection. If we summarize the data, approximately 70 to 80% of dogs show improved engagement when their owner is present. Around 83% rely on their owner when interpreting unfamiliar situations. Up to 75% consistently follow one key individual based on predictability. Genetic factors reinforce a natural tendency toward human proximity. Taken together, this indicates that following behavior is not random and not inherently problematic. It is an adaptive strategy that allows the dog to navigate its environment more efficiently. From the dog's perspective, staying close to its owner increases access to information, improves decision-making, and reduces uncertainty. For this reason, the behavior is not best understood as dependency. It is better understood as optimization. Your dog follows you not because it needs to in a negative sense, but because doing so is the most effective way to interpret and respond to the world around it. In that context, following behavior is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that the system is working exactly as intended.